Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the online virtual meeting for the Houston Lodge. Sorry for the delay associated with the password. I did not know that Zoom gonna enable the privacy setting early. They sent out an email notifying us that they will announce the privacy requirement, which is the password, and also you cannot enter before the meeting started. It used to be there's no password requirement. So when we booked this particular meeting originally, there was no password, and anyone can enter the meeting at any point in time, even before the meeting started. But they have since then changed that policy, and it was not supposed to take effect until tomorrow, but it well, for whatever reason they implemented it early, and that's why a lot of people got stuck without the password. Sorry for the inconvenience. So in terms of the agenda for today, Anne is going to go over her talk, and then we're going to have because of the stay-home work order, work-safe order that the Harris County has in place. Our next meeting for the study group in 2 weeks will also be held online as well. And there is a talk by Umar that we have scheduled for the beginning of May. I'm not sure if the Harris County order will be lifted or not by then, but for the time being, we probably gonna have that online as well. I will ask Lynn to send out the update with the new password, because we booked these meetings ahead of time. Earlier, they did not have any sort of password requirement, but now they implement it so that we have to have that password. So I will send out the information later on. And that's about it. In terms of the study group that we've been having, this in 2 weeks, I will be facilitating the last chapter of the Pablo Sander book, Evolution of Higher Consciousness. So that would be our last chapter. So we need to decide on what we want to do in terms of the study group for the next book as well. So that's something to keep in mind. And please go ahead and send us the info to let us know what you want to, which book you want to recommend for us to study next. Okay, so I believe Anne just raised her hand, so I'm going to unmute her.
I was waving to somebody.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think there is another wave your hand button on the,
okay,
the bottom left-hand corner.
Wait, hold on.
What bad doing?
Yeah. Go ahead, Barbara.
I just want to say hello and thank everybody.
Right. Anita? Hi.
Hi, I didn't mean to be unmuted. How are you all? It's good to see you. My friend Anne invited me to this. Thank you.
Lynn?
I just sent it out, the email that the Texas Federation is official canceled until next year for the Texas Federation.
Thank you.
In San Antonio. That's it.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Anne to get started.
Well, good morning. I think we've all joined in a little bit. Excuse my noises. I do not have COVID-19. but I do have allergies and a post-nasal drip and do that all the time. So, and then fortunately, the only kind of virus you could get from me this morning would be a computer virus, because we're not 6 feet in proximity or 5 feet in proximity. Just a couple of announcements for those of you that are on the phone. I can see several people are on the phone. Just know that I do have a PowerPoint presentation. However, I will be speaking, and so don't worry about not being able to see that. Let's take a few moments to ground ourselves and perhaps just open our chest and put our hands up together and just bend back a little bit so that our hearts are completely open, and you're just moving, knowing that all of us are doing this one thing in unison, that we're all moving our bodies and maybe entraining a little bit, putting our hands over. This is an Egyptian cross, and just putting our hands over in a cross in front of us, and of a symbol of solidarity. And this also, when you go like this, just means yes. So we're going to open this meeting and just say, yes, we're here, we're present, we're breathing together. And in Hawaii, they have a saying, it's called the ohana. And the ohana is the family of breathers. So let's be an ohana this morning. Let's be a family of breathers. Let's breathe together, breathing in deeply and exhale. I have a group that I run. It's called Abundance Affirmations. And I always say that throughout the day, let's think of when we breathe in our good. And when we exhale the good for all other beings on the planet. So let's take a deep intentional inhale and inhale our good this morning, our intention that we receive what we need when we need it, especially during this talk. Let's breathe in together and then exhale. And that is for the good of all beings on the planet, that they may be healthy, that they may be guided, and that they may get what they need when they need it. We invoke the presence of the highest today to be with us, and know that it is always with us, but sometimes it takes conscious attentions for us to be able to experience what is present. My lecture this morning is about making life easier. And I developed a philosophy that I now call EZosophy. And it's an interesting topic, especially during this time of COVID-19, because you might think, well, how can you talk about life being easy when we've got this COVID-19 virus? And during a time of tragedy, there is an aspect that is not easy, but all aspects during any tragedy can be easier. So we may be talking more about making life easier in the face of today's tragedy, but there's a story that I love, and that I heard Ram Dass say that he went to visit someone when they were dying. He went into their not hotel room, but their hospital room, and she was complaining and moaning, and he sat with her for 24 hours, and he looked at her and he said, I know you're dying and this is difficult, but do you have to die 24 hours a day? Could you take like an hour or something and not die and just live? And I think that that's the way that we need to face COVID-19. Be aware that it's there, but we still need to live. And we don't need to just live in kind of a apologetic way, or an oh no, what's going to happen way, or if we do, not 24 hours a day, just part of the day. Can we live in a way that we think about this as an adventure, the COVID-19 adventure? Jim and I had been on quite a journey. Our plans have been to move for 5 years. We started planning to move for 5 years ago. And as many of you know, we were unable to sell our house until recently. And when we put a contract on it, it was for 3 months. And so during these 3 months, we've packed and we're all ready to go, and then COVID hit. So we don't actually know what's going to happen. Will our house close? Will we be buying the home that we planned on buying, and some of the monies now are not there that were in stocks? Because we were planning on paying cash for the house. There's just a lot of things that are going on. And what it really comforts me is I do believe that the universe is benevolent, and that it always arcs towards good, if that is what our expectation is. And so I'm thinking of this as an adventure. I don't know what our moving adventure will be during the COVID-19 virus, but I do trust in the inherent good of the universe, knowing that everything will be okay. Years ago, I was robbed at gunpoint, and it was during a time when I was maybe a little bit more naive, and I believed that I could control everything in my life. And I knew that thought was creative and that we attract what we focus on. So I just, with a vengeance, I tried to figure out how to keep my body safe. I meditated. I tried to forgive everybody. I did everything that I could. And there was a point of realization that I came to when I realized I wasn't going to be able to keep my body safe. I could do everything under my control, but there were things that were not in my control. And it was at that point that I finally surrendered and let it go, because I realized that even if my body is not safe, that who I am is safe. And we can take that saying and that knowledge and that knowing, and that is, we do everything we can to protect ourselves from the COVID virus. But if by some mishap, some chance, some reason we get COVID virus, and even if we die, we know that who we are is safe and protected, because we're not our bodies. So I don't have it. Maybe I sound a little flippant when I say that, but I do believe that if for some reason I were to get that I would face this with a sense of humility and reverence, and perhaps not non-resistance, because what is what is, and we really can't change that. I'm going to see if I can bring up my screen here. Okay. Let me get, it's under my, sorry. Let me move my,
We see your presentation.
yeah, I know you do. It's just that I have a video cam that's covering this up. So I do this from, okay. I'm trying to get this in the slideshow version. Oh, here we go. So that's the beginning. We had a guided meditation. I decided not to do a deep guided meditation. It was just breathing meditation and introduction. So let's skip that. I just want to say, if you are on the call, I expected more people, but since we didn't have this number that we gave out earlier, they're not all on here. But if you're not a member of the Theosophical Society, it's a wonderful organization. We're based in Wheaton, Illinois. It costs $60 a year to join. And we also have a YouTube channel for the Theosophical Society that has a lot of great talks on it. There's the link, theosophical.org. I do want to mention that Nancy Grace contacted me. I don't know if you know, Triet, but the summer conference, our annual summer conference, has been canceled. And we also have a Theosophical Wiki, and that is where you can just learn all kinds of things about Theosophy, and also you can do a lot of research. And so this is what I've said, we want to take a break, because wherever we are, whether that is with or without a body, that it is enough. We will still be present. And so some of this, I will just say that these slides that I'm using are used in kind of my standard EZosophy offering. So today we are under a different set of circumstances, not that we're online, but there is a pressure, there's a collective pressure, there's an underlying worry because of the economy, because of COVID-19, because we can't go out. And I understand that and completely understand that, but this is going to be our hour break away from that if we can. If we can't, it's okay. The arms of love, the arms of compassion can hold everything. There's no need to ever be frightened about what we think or what we believe. But if we can change it, then that's what we need to do. But if we can't change it, then we don't need to resist it. So I think that sometimes we have too much itis, and that has been a blessing of the COVID virus. We're not doing too much, and we're not trying to be too much necessarily during this thing. In the normal Western world, what we try to do is too much. We try to pack too many things. And with Facebook, with Twitter, with all the social media, our consciousness and our focus has become fragmented. Now, given that probably about a third of the people in the Western Hemisphere have ADD or ADHD, that we already have a splintered focus, that it is especially a time that we need to learn how to rest our mind through meditation, but especially, and in addition to, not just especially, we need to make things easier. Simplicity is sacred, and the Course in Miracles says that simplicity is difficult for twisted minds. And I love that. Simplicity is difficult for twisted minds. I think I heard John Bradshaw say one time that everything we say, if it can't be understood by a 4-year-old, we're probably complicating it too much. Now, I understand that is a little bit too generic. It doesn't apply to everything. However, basic principles that we want to get across can be very simple. We don't have to, a lot of times we like to look intelligent, sound intelligent, use complicated ideas, but simplicity also is very sacred. So I hope we can have fun today. I don't know how much fun I can conjure up, given that I'm not given the feedback of an audience, and but we'll see what comes up. I am sincere but not serious. That's a thought that I've had for many years, because I believe that the Western world, especially spiritual seekers, have this tone of seriousness about everything they do. Like, I've got to get it right, and I've got to do the right thing, and it's all so serious and somber, and people walk around and do you remember when we used to go into banks and they were not joyful? You would walk in, you kind of be quiet when you walked into the bank. You didn't want anybody to look at you, you didn't want to make noises. Well, that's almost how we walk into life. Like, we're all walking into a bank, and we need to suppress our aliveness, because if someone notices us, it will be embarrassing. And there's like this pall or this belief that we have. Now, we break out. I don't mean that this is all of the time, but it's almost an underlying, unspoken template that we have. There is a group of Indians in South America, the Yanomami Indians, and they're called a Stone Age tribe because they're not inculcated by the Western world. And in their language, they do not have a tense for the future nor the past. Now, how many of us have trouble staying in the present moment? If we didn't have a future or a past tense, I'm thinking it would be much easier to stay in the present. We have been trained, especially in the Western world, to be serious. We have been trained to get extremely upset and suffer about problems that don't exist. It's almost a national pastime. We suffer about problems that don't exist. And so I'm going to talk about the different kinds of suffering that we have. It reminds me of a story about an anthropologist who was traveling in South America down the river, and the natives were paddling the boat, and there were some scientists in the boat, and they hit this really rough spot, and they were going like this, and they almost turned over. And the Westerners were all, I think I remember one of them was in France, and the Westerners was all going, oh my gosh, oh my God. And the Native Americans were just, they were just still rowing and they were happy. It was like, wow, we missed a big one, didn't we? And so it just shows the difference in how the cultures were trained to react differently to different situations. Fortunately, we can untrain ourselves from being so serious, from being so somber, and we can retrain ourselves to be open to the natural joy of being. What I'm saying, I had to read my slides so I can see what I was going to say. And that is, the things that I say here, they can't be applied to all situations. Can you imagine yourself going to the doctor and you've broken your arm and they said, oh yeah, well, you know, we can put a splint on this and we can fix it up. But the next time you come in to see the doctor and you have a heart attack, and the doctor says, oh yeah, let me get the splint out. It's like, no, you can't do the same thing. Every situation requires a different answer. So it's very well may be that what I say only applies during a certain time, and there's a time where it absolutely would not fit at all. So don't take everything that I say fundamentally that it applies to everything. Just know that there's certain situations and certain times when this does apply. And that is our goal here, is transformation, not information. You'll get information, but hopefully what we'll do when we gather in groups, when we open our mind, when we quieten ourselves, is transformation. And that is transformation from our thoughts and our holdings onto the past and the trappings of our past and the trappings of our belief, to being fresh in this moment, to being clear. One of the ways that one of the doors toward that transformation, towards that inspiration, toward that beauty within us, is our intuition. And John Attier passed this book out to us a few years ago, and I didn't pick it up for a long time, but then I picked it up and it's absolutely wonderful. It's called The Art of Inner Listening by Jessie. And in this book, Jessie talks about getting together with a group of women once a week for an hour. And they would pose a question. And then for an hour, they would listen and write. Well, it had to be longer than an hour, meaning, or after that, if they listened for an hour, then they would talk to each other and they would discuss the answers that they came up with. And they said they came up with some brilliant answers. And so I believe that intuition is our #1 guiding system that can be counted on, rather than we have an egoic transmission that goes on all the time, based on the past, based on future, based on fear. And that is one that we really don't need to listen to and we can't trust. Thoughts are not trustworthy, not all thoughts. But when we have that thought that we know we can count on, we can feel it, we can sense that presence if we train ourselves to do it. Many of us have deadened our body. We are in a culture that pretty much says, and that is, let's live here and not in our bodies. I realize that a lot of people on this call are from other countries, and I know that I do not know how you were trained, but I do know that the Western mind has an intellectual bent in which we are more head-oriented than an integrative approach by using our heads and our bodies. But intuition is something that really requires our body and our mind. Okay. I knew I had, okay. Oh, I'm going backwards. I'm hitting the wrong thing. Okay. We've been over that. Well, I don't seem to be able to move my slide here. Let's see what happens when I do this. Just try to do it with my hand. As I said, we need our body. We need not just our minds, but we need our bodies. Our bodies have intelligence. We're finding out that the gut, the biogome, has a what is it called? The bionome, is that it? Has, anyway, it's the gut bacteria, that it has a brain, that the heart has intelligence. And so let's use some intelligence of ease just to try to see the difference between what efforting and non-efforting is like. Just move your hand up and down. You just move it up and down. Now, the next time we move it up and down, I just want you to move it up with consciousness. Move it and think easier, freer, or lighter. Just feel what it feels like to move the hand with full focus and attention. Full focus and attention. Now, let me get some feedback from you and see, could someone describe the difference between you have a conscious for it to be free and smooth and easy versus just waving our hand without any kind of thought or attention? We just wave your hand and we just automatically did it. Can I get some feedback from someone about how that felt?
Well, hi, it's Anita Joe.
Okay.
The first version was rather mechanical. And there's a, okay, I'll do my hand, but I'm still in my head and I'm, following the order, and it's mechanical, and there's a dissociation involved. When I'm asked to wait a minute, easier, feel that, there's more of my cells get on board, and my awareness is not just of my hand, but my whole being experiencing the sensation of the easiness and actually pleasure of the hand moving like this. So I'm more integrated in the second version. More of my whole self is part of it.
Thank you. Anyone else have anything to say about that? Did you notice a difference?
Hi, yeah, this is Shanti. So when you do this, the first one, actually you can do this mindlessly. No connection, right? You can just do this. And it feels haphazard. There's no flow. This is flow and easiness and grace. It just brings a different feeling and sensation. And I feel energy moving the minute I move my hand in that way, as opposed to this. So
what was it that made the difference? What makes the difference between number 1 and 2?
I think for me is it brought more mindfulness to the movement. So it's more connection than doing something mindlessly.
So there's an awareness.
It's an awareness, consciousness.
A focus and an intention. However, was it hard to do that? Was it hard to make that switch? And it wasn't efforting. You didn't have to take a class.
It was effortless.
You didn't have to take a class on, oh my gosh, let me take a class on how to move my arm easily. No. And I suspect that regardless of how much we have been trained to make life hard, that we can move into the moment. And without a tremendous amount of training, we can begin to join in that non-efforting experience of life. So it's very easy to do. It's not an intellectual thing. It's physical, it's intentional, but we're going from this tiny focus to a much larger focus. Let's try another kind of focus, and that is to maybe hold your hand in front of your face and then just look at your middle top finger. Just look at your middle top finger. And now you're focusing on it. It's a laser focus. Now I want you to move your focus to the peripheral where you can still see that finger, but you can see so much more. Now, and you can let go. Now that is a different kind of awareness. It's odd, but now I told you, remember, that it's a conundrum. There are many paradoxes in spirituality, because tell me the difference. And somebody tell me a difference of what their experience was in terms of difficulty, which was easier to do, which felt less forced or less controlled. Can somebody speak to that for me? I guess you'll have to raise your hand if you want to say something. because everybody's muted. Tria, have you got control? Can you see when there is anybody raising their hand? Can you hear me? You can. Okay. Well, I'm assuming that no one is raising their hand to participate in this because I don't see anybody coming up.
Go ahead, Joe.
This is Flim, and I would say that I use both the robotic as well as peripherality. It seems to work, not perfectly, but it seems to work in a helpful manner.
Okay, I'm not clear. Could you say that in a different way, Flim?
Yes, I really don't exclude anything in the effort to make everything easier, lighter, more fun. And it's certainly not a perfect procedure, but it seems to work a little more.
Everybody else.
The more I use it, and with synchronicity, if we look for all of this, we'll find it easier.
Okay, Flim, thank you. Anyone else?
Go ahead, Anthony.
I felt when I felt I needed more concentration to specifically look at my middle finger than it did to look at my all my fingers holistically.
Yeah, thank you. So I say that when we look laser focused, and a lot of us tend to just use our eyes to look at a teeny bit of what we're seeing with our senses. But when we just use a soft focus, it's easier on our eyes and we can see more. There are many times in which we need to use that laser focus when we want to see something, when we're working on something. But when we go for a walk, for example, a lot of people are focused on their phone when they're going for a walk and miss everything that's going on here. And I'm just suggesting that it is easier when we allow soft focus into our lives more, because that pinpointed focus, that takes a lot more energy and effort to do. But that is the way that we usually train our body. And when we have that, of course, we have to use that laser focus when we're on the computer because we're looking right there. But when we're walking on the path, when we're with the trees and the mountains, we don't have to look at a tree. We want to look at the whole horizon. And I'm suggesting that there are two eyes. There's the outer eye that we look at all of creation, and then there's the inner eye. And the inner eye is really just trained to, let's see, somebody's microphone is on. Is it you, Tria?
And
Yeah.
Charles,
Okay.
I noticed when we were doing the soft focus, instead of focusing on the top of the middle finger, that it was a matter of surrendering. Kind of like it took more trust to not be focused. I thought that was an interesting observation.
That is. So would you say then that it seems it's more control than to focus? It takes more control.
The opposite.
You mean to focus?
Focusing was more controlled.
Right. Yeah, that's what I said.
More
Yes.
common.
Yes.
And
yes.
to not focus took a little effort to allow that to happen.
Or trust, you said.
Trust, yes.
Right, because it's not familiar. Anytime we move into a territory that's not familiar, then we have to trust. We have to allow that to happen. Anything else, Charles?
No, that's all.
Okay.
Thank you.
So in the inner world, we have the same thing going on. What we've learned to trust really is our thoughts. And we laser focus onto the thoughts. And sometimes we laser focus onto the emotions. And while we can trust our emotions in some ways, because our emotions do a couple of things, and a lot of our emotions are reaction, they're not really spontaneous, genuine emotions. Our emotions tell us that we've got too much cortisol in our body. It tells us that we have created some kind of an upset in our body, that our fight or flight has gone up. Our emotions tell us a lot of things until we learn how to not be so reactive. And it's not about controlling emotions, it's learning how to be so present that we don't, when we're not present, something happens and then we have this emotional flooding. When we're very present, when we're watching, when we're not judging, when we don't have 1,000 filters on everything in reality, then we don't have that fight or flight, because there's a calmness, this accepting everything as it is, not resisting. Emotions talk about resistance, and emotions talk about being tied to the past. Most of the time, as I'm saying, there's no one-shot deal, but emotions are very much tied to the past. I'm going to talk about that in terms of emotional triggering as being one of the sufferings. And, you know, I don't think I have here I do. I have my phone so I can kind of keep up with the time. I had given a similar talk in New Orleans, and I had asked our group at the Houston Lodge why it was that Blavatsky and Olcott suffered. They suffered physically. Blavatsky overworked, and Henry Olcott still worked very. He was a healer. He would see 20, 30 people in one day. He wrote letters every day. They were both stretched to the end. And I took a look at, well, when did Sigmund Freud come along? Well, he came along, it was kind of a contemporary of theirs, but it wasn't really, people were not understanding and realizing what this whole psychology movement was about. And so at the time that Blavatsky and Olcott came along, and for those of you that are not in Theosophy, those are our two founders. When they came along, the focus was more spiritual. They were going to an inner frontier, one that had not been researched, experienced so much in the West. They had gone to India, they had studied Eastern philosophy, participated in it, and their mindset was not so much psychology and emotional reality as it was spirituality. And even though they're wonderful and great people, I think that our consciousness has evolved more now, so that we understand that we have to bring our emotions and our psychology into our spirituality. I did the same thing they did. When I was very young, I wanted to learn to meditate. Well, it seemed like it was young to me. And so by the time I was 23, I started meditating. And I would meditate for hours a day. And my life was miserable. And I thought, well, if I can just meditate and stay in this blissful state, then everything will be okay. And I would be in this blissful state, and it was like, take me, take me, take me. But yet that wasn't reality, because when I came back, I still had to deal with the same kind of emotional upsets. And that meditation just wasn't enough to clear this out. If you read the introduction to Israel Regarde's Golden Dawn, which is a book of ceremonial magic, in the beginning he says, don't take this stuff on until you've cleared out your emotional and psychological wounding. You may need to go to a good therapist. You need to be very psychologically and emotionally grounded before you get into this stuff. And I'm not sure how that affected them, but I'm saying that consciousness has evolved, and we now know that we can't just deal with spirituality. We have to deal with our emotions. We have to deal with our thoughts. We have to deal with a host of other things. Buddha says that suffering is not necessary, but we will suffer. Why will we suffer? Because we will get attached. Why will we get attached? We will get attached because we love people, and they will die. They will leave us. They will betray us. So we will suffer. And so it's like, I'm not talking about eliminating all sufferings, but there are sufferings we can eliminate. There are 4 kinds of suffering: genuine suffering, cover-up suffering, where we suffer about stuff that really is not sufferable. It's not worthy of suffering. Emotional triggers from the past, and ego-driven struggle and suffering. Take a look at that. Genuine struggle and suffering is about something very difficult. I had a client once who was going into surgery, and he said, "Anne, how can I make this easier?" Now, he is on the gurney. They're getting ready to roll him into surgery. He says, "I want to make this." He says, "I want to make this easy." And I said, "This is not easy. You are getting ready to go into surgery. It's normal for you to be afraid. It will be easier if you can calm your mind." But having a reaction like that, that's genuine struggle and suffering, because he was right in front of a very changeable situation and he didn't know what was going to happen. But if he was still suffering years later about his surgery, then that would be ego-driven struggle and suffering. Let's just say that you broke up with somebody and it was 2 months, 3 months later. It takes a while to heal from breaking up in a relationship, and that's genuine suffering. But 2 years down the road, if you're still suffering about it, you got a problem. So here are just some things that are genuine suffering: loss of a pet, a friend, financial stability, loss of a family member, loss of health, divorce, a traumatic event, fire, rape, flood. You know, our street flooded, and even though our house didn't flood, the water came up very close, and all of our neighbors' houses flooded, and they kept bringing furniture out to the street. And as we rode down the street after the floods receded, floodwaters receded, it was like a furniture graveyard, and people were out in their front yards just figuring out what to do, how to do it. That was genuine loss. Robbery. If you had your heart set on getting into Harvard all your life and you didn't get into it, that would be a genuine loss and you would suffer about it. But as I'm saying, if you're still suffering about that 2 months later, it's gone into another kind of suffering. And instead of suffering is and excuse me, I keep moving my chair because my pillow falls out. I don't have my regular chair because with the move, I've got this hard chair I'm sitting on. Instead of suffering is a suffering racket. And we're going to see what it is like to have instead of suffering. Just do a little exercise with me. Imagine that you're driving down the road and you have a meeting and you know that people are counting on you being there. And you come to a line of cars that are stopped. And you look and think, oh my gosh, I've still got plenty of time. I got 20 minutes. It's like a 5-minute drive. So you sit and you sit, and 5 minutes go by. Just notice what you're feeling if you're really into this experience. And 10 minutes go by, 20 minutes go by. Now you're late. You don't have your cell phone with you. These people, for some reason, it died. You know, of course it died because everything is going wrong. What are you feeling? This is probably your racket. That is the feeling that you have all the time during most upset. Some people get irritated. Some people get angry. Some people get scared. It's like, oh my gosh, they're going to think that I'm a bad person, that I didn't call. But we have some kind of reaction, and that is a racket feeling. That is an instead of feeling. That is a cover-up feeling. It feels like suffering, but it's really covering up what's truly going on. For example, if I'm angry, then the bottom line of that might be something like, I'm not going to be respected because I'm not keeping my commitment to the time. Does anybody give me any feedback on what they felt during this experience?
Anxiety.
Anxiety.
My heart was going beating fast.
And was that a familiar anxiety? Have you had that one before?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
right before, like if you're going to be late for a meeting, even at work or something. Yeah.
So
Very familiar.
I'm talking about it's like a default place to go.
It's a go-to emotion of a similar event. It's a go-to.
Yes.
Yes, definitely.
And did anybody feel anger, irritation?
Yeah, hi. I go right into fight and flight. My breath gets short, my blood pressure rises, and I'm ready to fight.
Anybody else? I'm just going to say that we all have a default feeling, and it's called a racket. And that is it'll sound funny, but it is the negative feeling we most enjoy, because all other negative feelings we don't enjoy because they're threatening to us. And so what it does is it blocks our genuine ability to feel what's going on. For example, somebody might come up to you and say, "You look beautiful today." And because of this racket, the thought might be fear. What do they want from me? Instead of having a feeling of opening, which might be, isn't it really wonderful to have somebody say something nice to me? And so what we do is that this racket, this response, this default response runs our lives so much of the time. And that's what we're talking about, not information, but transformation. We want to be transformed to be our spontaneous, unique, true and real selves. And of course, the impetus for that, the source for that, the energy for that, the zest for that all comes from the inside. It doesn't come from the outside. This is a time in which there's a lot of information coming in from the outside. But remember, information does not lead to transformation. And during this time, do you want to protect yourself from the COVID virus by getting more information? Of course, information like wash your hands, put on a mask, that, yes. Stay 6 feet, don't go out, all of that kind of stuff. But in terms of but we've had that information, we know that. Information will not lead to transformation. And transformation is probably the only way we can deal with this. Yes, is there somebody that wanted to speak?
Yeah, Charles.
Yes.
As I was living through that experience, having been through your teachings about EZosophy, I noticed my thinking changed. I said, I can't do anything about this right now, but when I get there, I'll acknowledge what happened. And in the meantime, I'll be at peace and be in a better place to present when I get there. So with an awareness that I was able to apply what I've been learning from you.
Thank you, Charles. I just want to say that reminds me of a time when I went to speak for the U.S. Navy. And I got to my talk, and when I got there, there was an armed guard, and come to find out that I had to have special permission to get in. Well, I had never been given any information, any permission, anything except that my class, I'll go give this lecture at a certain time. And I had, and I'm doing the same thing, Charles. I'm going, okay, let's breathe. Let's not get overwhelmed. I can't walk in and give a lecture being discombobulated. But, you know, if you wanted to be on time, probably at a military function, you would pretty much think that was when you wanted to be on time. And I did get in and I did give my lecture, and it was a lecture on EZosophy. And of course I was able to use that experience as a part of my talk. But I had to do a tremendous amount of talking down, not to go over the edge, because I couldn't get in to that talk. All right, so we have emotional triggers. I often describe these as somebody can be saying something, I can be reading something, and all of a sudden it's like a light switch. I'm okay, and then all of a sudden, bang, bingo, I'm out of sorts. I have an emotional trigger and I can feel it in my body. I like to do a check. there's 3 areas in the body I like to check. One is in the heart. I'm not sure. Yeah, I can see myself. One is in the heart chakra. One is in the gut. And then one is below in the lower abdomen. And I just put my hand in each one of these places and I check to see what's going on physically there for my emotional triggers. And then I begin to work with those emotional triggers. I want to say that I'm not going to work with that aspect of suffering today because that's not what I'm going to do. But there are a lot of things that do work with that. Shanti does a process that works with that. Ron Hubbard's Dianetic auditing was based on that, was based on going to the original event that was upsetting and flattening out all the emotions that built on it from the future. The Sedona method deals with working with that through an awareness process. So there are many things that you can deal with emotional triggers. If you have emotional triggers, and we all do, it is important that we find what works for us, the tools or techniques that work for us, because they can be very debilitating. They can lead us into places we don't want to go and keep us from the brilliance and the spontaneous ideas and creativity that we have. And now I want to talk about ego-driven struggle and suffering, which is the 4th kind of struggle. And this is the belief that life is hard, that you must suffer about it, and there's nothing you can do about it. This is very much of a Western concept. You say that all the time. Life is hard. Everybody goes, and it's like, hold it. Well, life is hard, but it's not hard all the time. But we often live as if it's hard all the time. For example, we have a project. We go into the mindset, this is really going to be hard. We don't think this is going to be an adventure. What kind of creative possibility can I bring into this? But it's just, ugh. So there's certain situations that we have programmed ourselves for it to be hard. One time, I can remember I was giving a lecture, and I think I drove to Fairhope, Alabama, and I had driven, or maybe it was New Orleans, but I had driven like 8 or 9 hours, and I got and they go, are you okay? Everything okay? I know it's really tough. And I go, I just drove in a car for 10 hours. I really wasn't under a firing squad. There was no war. All I did was ride. I'm fine. And there's certain things that we suffer about. We suffer about taxes. Now, I don't think anybody likes to pay money out. However, if there are things that we have to do that aren't going to change, then suffering is really just kind of an animated resistance. So when you have any kind of animated resistance to what is, we suffer. Now, if I had a drinking problem, I would be what? An alcoholic. But if I have a thinking problem, then I'm really a hardaholic. And a hardaholic makes life hard and suffers about it. You know, we believe in problems that do not exist. We believe in problems that do not exist. How much faith do we have in problems that do not exist? We love our problems that do not exist. We share our problems that do not exist with other people. Have you ever seen somebody that shared a problem that does not exist and they're very animated and happy? Oh, I went into so-and-so and such almost happened and it was just really bad. And they're smiling. So here's some hardaholic beliefs. My life is harder than yours and I'll prove it. It's spiritual to suffer. No pain, no gain. Life is serious. Adults are serious. I remember the first time I ever went to New York City, and I saw people walking down the road, the sidewalk, and they all looked so serious. It's like someone has died. They were all walking. They had on their black overcoats. It was raining, and maybe that's why they were upset, because it was raining. But you know what? Raining is not an emergency. Getting wet is not an emergency. I can remember reading a book about this woman who went and spent some time with the Aboriginal people, and it starts raining, and they go out and They start dancing in the rain, and she runs into the little tent or something. It's not an emergency. Life is serious. We believe life is serious. We believe, which I alluded to before, work is hard. We believe we have to live in the real world. Now, certainly there are dreamers. There's people that don't live in the real world. But in general, when we say, you got to live in the real world, you know what we mean? What we mean is you're not taking this seriously. And so some of us are called Pollyanna because we take that kind of attitude. But this is a slippery slope. I mean, we do have to live in a real world. We have to take responsibility. We have to pay our bills. We have to plan ahead if we're in an appointment with somebody, because we can't just walk in their office. That's not socially acceptable, and they might not be able to see us. We have to plan, and we have to live in the real world. But there's an aspect of living in the real world that means that we're walking according to other people's values. We're walking according to what we're taught. We're walking so that we won't get in trouble. We're walking on eggshells so that we don't want to break them. That's what's going on. And we're pretty miserable, and we can't show it because we've learned how to suppress our emotions. And also, people say you've got to live in the real world. That basically means you're not living in the real world, but I am. And another belief, and that is, unless you suffer, you aren't good. I was reading Florence Scovel Shinn's book yesterday, and she was talking about artists. And someone made a remark, and they said, oh, they're not a good artist. They've got money. And what they meant was, because they're not suffering and struggling, they can't really be creative. They're not really real people. You can't really count them as serious. And that's crazy. Other forms of suffering, we try to outdo people's to-do list. You know, I've got this, this, and this to do, and the other person says, oh, hey, that's nothing. I got this, this, and this to do. It's kind of this battling to-do list. Another thing that we do in terms of the ego-driven struggle and suffering is play the game, ain't it awful? Do you know that so-and-so did so-and-so? Yeah, I can't stand him. That's just absolutely horrible. The gall of that person, just, oops. I have, uh-oh. Let me get that back. So at this point, and there are just many, many forms of this, I'd just like to ask some people if they recognize this ego-driven struggle and suffering, they recognize this heartaholism in their lives, or just you can see what I'm talking about, just some feedback or comments about that.
Hi there.
Hi.
Yeah, my life's harder than yours, and I'll prove it. And just and people wouldn't think that they're having fun, as you say, but yeah, it gets into a competition. And if a person, in my experience, I might start to share something, but then, I'm hoping just to be seen or heard. But then people start piling on. Oh, you think you've got it bad.
Right.
And oh, wow, I'm so sorry that I started to share this. That's one. And I'm sure I've done that myself. Oh, really? Well, let me tell you. And it's actually, yeah, it's fun. I'm taking a theology class right now, Hebrew Bible 2. So we have a lot of fun out of Chicago. And, oh, you think your teacher's tough? So there's that fun, but it can take darker or less productive turns than that. And anything else about hard? I make things hard that aren't really hard, such as going into a post office. Is just, and I got that from my mom, so it's a family heartaholic. You know, we would rather, who knows, have a root canal than go into a post office. It's a mystery. And then finally, I really appreciated what you said about what is the feeling, or what did you call it? The noise, you didn't call it the noise. When I'm at the stoplight, you know, and that starts, what did you call that?
What it's a racket?
My racket starts. So what is the feeling that that's covering? That's very fascinating to me, because I'll get ready to, that racket of the little warrior archetype, cussing, and I'll show them and I'm going to fight. I think it really covers a really deep grief and existential angst that's very strong in me. So I think it keeps me from feeling.
Thank you. And that and that is part of the gift, really, that we have today with the COVID-19 virus. We are either directly experiencing and allowing our angst to be present so that we can deal with it in a constructive way, because if we don't face it right on, then what we're doing is that we're covering up. It's a cover-up. So I do think that that is a gift. I wanted to look up John of the Cross. I know that you've all heard the phrase dark night of the soul, but I haven't read his complete story, but I know that he was maybe considered a heretic or iconoclastic. He was put in a cage. He was put in dark dungeons. And during this time in which he was beaten up and suffered and so forth so much, he wrote just the most illuminated things. And I'm not suggesting that we have suffering in order to become better people or to invoke the presence of greatness or something like that. But suffering is there. Genuine suffering is there. There is a collective bank of suffering that we all can enter. But until we learn how to enter that and deal with that, then we run from that. And many people's lives are just constructed in the action of running away from what cannot be faced, whether it is the fear of death, whether it is the fear of loss of income, whatever it is. Because if I face the fear of loss of income, if I deal with just, the fear, let it move through my body and move out, I can go on. But if I keep running from it, it keeps chasing me and it keeps nipping on my heels. So the Theosophical Society meeting is about ancient wisdom. And even though the older wisdom didn't talk so much about psychology, I think that in consciousness we have to learn how to deal with these things. Surely there were things in the Bible, which is an ancient self-help book that talked about this, so it's like, do not worry, even the lilies in the field are taken care of. There were some hints in the Bible for our emotional softening, for being cared for compassion. But we have, as consciousness, we have evolved, and we're evolving to deeper and deeper levels of awakening. And you can't awaken without facing the darkest within. Okay, is this Jennifer? I can't hear you. Tree, it needs to turn off on the bottom left-hand corner. There you go.
Going on what you were saying as well, I've also heard this referred to as emotional intelligence.
Oh, yes. Good, thank you.
And just being able, I've heard that term several years ago, but I guess it's kind of, being able to take an emotion and figuring out how much, I guess, power to give it, and how much, kind of getting control of it more and being more intelligent about the emotion and really how to react to it emotionally, if I'm making sense.
Absolutely. Yes, I had forgotten that term, and that's perfect, Jennifer. Thank you for reminding me of it. I don't always keep up with contemporary psychology, but that's a great word, yes. I will tell you that I can't, if any of you have raised your hand or you're trying to get on, I'm only seeing 4 boxes, and you could be raising, there is a chat on the bottom, there's a chat somewhere, there's something for me right now, it's on the top of my screen and where you can raise your hand, but I can't really see that. So I don't know. I guess you can unmute. I'm trying to get to, I can't even, whoops. I can't even get to the, there's a box that's on the top under my webcam.
I
I
know.
can't tell. I can't tell where you're trying to speak or ask anything, so.
No, I'm saying I gotta go. You're missing the point. I'm saying I gotta go get it at some point.
Okay, who?
I think that was just someone who accidentally unmuted.
Sorry about that.
That's all right. That's okay.
I unmute everyone, so that's why. So let me go ahead and see if anyone has any questions.
Is there, I have a technical question. Is there more to the PowerPoint, Anne, that we'll be seeing?
I usually have more material. Let's see what's next. I can't, because of my thing, let's see if I can move this up and I can actually see what's over here, yeah.
Okay, look like Terry wanted to talk, so I'm gonna unmute her.
Okay.
Oh, hold on.
Does she have a video?
Yeah, I have to unmute also. Sorry. No, I was just going to tell you that you're right. You were right that we couldn't hear you when you first started talking because you weren't muted, but you're fine. Thanks. I appreciate you doing this.
Okay. So that's all you wanted to say, Terry?
Yes, I'm enjoying the conversation. Thank you, and it's been a great conversation. And I really like the concept of emotional intelligence, which is one of the books I read many years ago, and it really follows along with everything that you're saying about approach to life. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me move. So I will talk about some ways to help us. And I think you've mentioned it. Charles actually said something about it, and that is one way to get out of ego-driven struggle and suffering is through inquiry, and that is ask the question. You know, ask a question. If I am suffering about something, in the middle of it, I can say, where did I learn that? I also, Joe, for some reason, my mother did not like to go to the post office either. And I had the same kind of training about going to the post office. I don't know what that is, which I have had to work with over the years. And so there, a question and inquiry, we can say, how did I learn this suffering? And another question that I like to ask myself when I'm in the middle of something, especially an emotional trigger, or I could be worried and suffering about something that's in the future, which really, you know, is a what if. And I say, who is suffering? And try to get in touch with the essence of who I am and to see, now, is my real self suffering? Do I believe and understand and know who I am? Do I trust that? Do I believe in that? Do I believe in that past all appearances, past all events, past all what ifs? And so the inquiry is just a way, an inquiry is a way to just focus our mind in a different direction. I don't know that it matters how we focus our mind. There are many different ways to do it, but it is important that we do it so that we can become more genuine and more related to who we are. So usually when I say who taught me to suffer, I generally will go to my parents. Did my parents teach me? Did they suffer about this? And then I say, oh my gosh, I've got hand-me-down suffering. I'm suffering about what they suffered about. Many parents suffered about money. Their parents were in the depression, then they suffered about money, and then they passed it down. These things are passed down emotional. They're emotional pass downs. And if we don't stop them, if we don't examine them, if we don't question them, we are a victim to those. I like to say that I want to break the chain that binds me to my parents' suffering. And I had plenty, of suffering when my parents suffered plenty, and not necessarily about things that needed to be suffered about, but things that were not real. I have this thing, I call this the heartaholic mantra, and it goes like this. Have you ever heard somebody do it? There's like, now notice this is not the same thing like, this is, it's a sigh. If you say, oh, can you come down to, can you meet me for lunch? Now remembering I'm not talking about currently because of the COVID virus, but can you meet me for lunch? They go, oh, I wish I could, but I've got so much to do. So when you see somebody doing this, or you're doing it, you are having a hard, H-A-R-D, attack. That's how you can tell whether you're having a heart attack or not. Now, not all heart attacks are accompanied by a sigh, but if you're sighing like that, it is a heart attack. It opens, and if we have awareness of that, we can go, oh my gosh, I'm suffering over a problem that doesn't exist. Sometimes just changing the language and questioning what's going on is enough to turn it around. Other times we have to go deeper. I love this cartoon. It says, I don't have the usual bouts of anxiety like I once did, and that's what worries me. We actually miss our upsets. Drama is a drug, whether it's real drama or drama that we've made up and created. There are lots of drugs of choice. I will tell you that if anyone, probably not going to go through everything, or if I do, it'll be quickly. If anybody wants a copy of the PowerPoint, just email me, Ann@annGillis.com, or get in touch with Triet if you have his information, and I'll be glad to send you PowerPoint. So our drugs of choice, feeling needed. Now, remember, on these drugs of choice, there's usually a light and a dark side to everything. So feeling needed, there's not anything wrong with doing that. But having to feel needed in order to validate our existence, that's the dark side. And many people have that, not just the normal, I feel needed and this good. It's the dark side of that. Taking care of others and not getting our needs met. Feeling excluded, feeling betrayed. Some people, I mean, if you're looking through the filters of betrayal, life is a betrayal. Everything that happens is a betrayal. We take it personally. Fear of lack, jealousy, physical violence, hatred, prejudice, gossip, losing a career or longing for a career or soulmate. I've seen so many people that say, oh, I have so much to love to give, and if I could just give this to someone. And this longing is ego-driven. But also, if you hear somebody say that, they probably means they're codependent, and they're going to suck the life out of somebody when they get there. I've got so much love to give. Can you see how contrived that is, how dramatic that is, how emotionally stimulating that is? Oh, this longing. We do have a longing. There's this primal longing that we have. It's called mutmashutva in Sanskrit. And this primal longing we have is the longing to be one with the self, or you can say to be one with God. That is the primary longing. And we cover it up with many false longings. And until we really address and go to that primary longing, then our agenda is not effective, because we can never go to who we are, to our authentic self, to the love of the source, to our integrated self when we're off on the side streets. I'm just go through this: feeling trapped, feeling abandoned. Remember, all of these can also be on the emotional trigger side, but they also can be ego-driven. Anguish, anxiety, depression, hurry, revenge, sibling rivalry. This is one I love: longing for a lost high school love. I mean, you're like 70 years old and still thinking about the person in your high school and just longing. That is the ego constructing something to give a kind of intensity. And the drugs become our identity. I am the one that suffers. I am the one that is anxious. I am the one that is mistreated. Hello, this is Ann, and I am, my name, no, hello, my name is, I am the one that is mistreated. And so we lead with that, and we don't say that. We do it in a meta communication. We say that through backdoor channels. This is not, remember now, some of the stuff that I'm saying can be genuine suffering, but I'm saying there is an aspect of it that can be ego driven. And when it is, then that's something that we can actually change. There are 3 kinds of addictions. There's chemical addictions, which I'm not dealing with, which is drugs, alcohol, sugar, those kind of things. But there's a process addiction. And the process addiction is like shopping, worrying, hoarding. And I'm thinking that ego-driven struggle and suffering is a process addiction. It's something that we do in our minds, that we create in our minds, and we get addicted to those thought patterns and emotional patterns. Emotional triggers, I think that I did not, I'm not going to go through this too much, but you do know that our psychology becomes our biology, and one way to deal constructively when we are triggered with our fight or flight, need to fight or flight, is to shake. Because what happens is that the cortisol levels go up, the amygdala go to, well, you know what I'm talking about. I usually can say that word, but I'm not saying it right now. The parts of our brain go off that shoot these chemicals, and that part of the brain is saying, okay, there's something dangerous going on. You need to go. And you know, you've had that fight or flight, but we don't do that. We sit there and emotionally ruminate. So a good constructive way to do that is to just shake, to move the body up and down and shake and get that out. And then they say, oh, she's doing something. She's moving, rather than try to figure it out. When we're emotionally triggered, we need to get it out of our body. We don't really need to take a mental approach to that. We need to move. Another thing is that whenever we have the fight, or whenever we get ready to do something new, we are triggered, because it takes only 5 seconds for the mind to try to talk us out of doing something. And so if you're getting ready to do something new, or you're just getting ready to do a task, it's good to think, I'm going to, for example, I think I'll go wash my hair, and it may be something as simple as that. Well, the mind will opposite, well, you don't need to do that now. And if you can just go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, you can interrupt. And when we do that, what it does is it takes the thinking process from the back of the brain to the front of the brain, and it allows us to be able to do things. Because when we're thinking from the back of the brain, because as I'm saying, it's called the spotlight effect, and that is the back of the brain tries to magnify danger in terms of anything that we're doing new. So if we can stop when we want to do something new, even if we have a new idea, and just count from 5 to 1, then let's see, yes, from 5 to 1, then we have a different part of our brain that is stimulated, and then we can often move on and make that change. So that's what I just talked about now. But they're brain tricks that we can do. I'm not going to cover that. I think really my time, I'm going to look and see if there's anything else here I want to take. I meant to take that out. I have given you a lot about being serious. However, I would like to ask you all to join me in a song. Everybody can't see the lyrics. Triet, can we turn everybody's mic on? Everybody's mic on. Triet, your mic. Triet, your mic is on. Okay, there you go. So this is a song. We do get very serious, and maybe I do get serious today, but there's a downside of serious. So I'm going to ask if you would sing this with me. I am not a wonderful singer. I know that some of you online here today are trained singers. I am not. Please forgive me for that. I do believe that everyone should sing and sing their song, whether they are prepared for that or not. So if you would join in with me with this song is, joy to the world, the time has come.
to
Have a little fun.
We frowned and frowns. Our
Our
smiles
smiles are upside down.
now. We've been too serious. We've been too
Been too
serious.
We've been too serious.
We came to earth
To have some
fun and laugh,
Laugh and
sing
sing.
and dance.
dance.
We
We
brought
brought
our
our
work to bring
to
to
bring
life,
life
not
and not to be serious
and
and
not
not
to
to
be
be
serious and
and
not
not to be serious. Oh my gosh.
we
Lost
lost
our
our
way.
way. We forgot to play
And
and
acted
acted like
like
adults.
adults.
We
We
worked and
worked and
forgot
forgot life's
life's
work.
perks. We've been
We've
too
been too
serious.
serious.
Oh no, we've been
Been
too
too
serious.
serious.
Oh no,
We've
we've
been
been too serious. Okay, I'm going to cut it off. We've had plenty of fun, hopefully. I do want to mention one more thing before I close, and that is that in terms of this emotional intensity, we usually have an emotional intensity scale, and I'm going to say it's between 1 and 10. And if we grew up in a household where there was a lot of fighting, there was physical harm, then we have what is called a 10 emotional intensity scale. If we grew up where our parents were uninvolved, whether they were kind of scared little mice people, they didn't say anything, they never took a stand, we might have a 2. Everything is just kind of monochromatic in terms of the emotions. And so whatever we grew up with is our default intensity scale. And if we grew up with a lot of anger, upset, craziness, severe depression around us, we're going to intensity scale. And so you can think about that because when I say we look for it, we will create it. We will create it in relationship with other people, like start fights and do all kinds of things to be sure that we can keep that emotional intensity scale up. And then if we don't have anybody around us, we will create it internally through our drama, our thoughts, and our emotions. Anyone want to speak to that? I can't see if there are any hands raised because I don't have.
To speak to the emotional scale raised with?
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting. I think I know I have a really high emotional scale. Oddly, it was a silent household. No one expressed their emotions, but there was rage going on almost all the time inside my mother, panic, fear, and rage, inside my grandmother. So I think that's also possible. Is that possible, Anne? Because it was in the atmosphere, they just didn't give voice to it.
Yes, because you were experiencing that not verbally, you're communicating emotionally. It's an emotional communication, yes. Now, what I'd like to make a point about all of this is often when we discover something within ourselves and we go, oh my gosh, no wonder my life is so blah, 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 because my parents were blah, 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 so now I'm blah, 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 blah. And I'm just saying all of this, what we need to do is distance ourselves and think, this is some good information that I'm getting. I can now notice when I'm having this emotional drama and maybe not be so attached to it. Maybe I can move away from it. Just because we had a messed up past, just because we have emotional drama, it doesn't matter what it is. Who we are has never changed. It's always present, and it's always available almost immediately. We can go into this awareness, this presence, and everything it falls away. But there are times when it doesn't fall away, and that's the time when we look at some information. We maybe get help from other people, and maybe we are quiet. Maybe we do some work with writing. But for the most part, when we become aware of what we're doing and we have these thoughts coalesce in our mind, we can move right into a state of awareness and okayness, just like when we moved from this to this. But when we can't, that's when we need a little bit more information, because sometimes information will keep our minds quiet enough so that we can go to transformation. As I'm saying, there is no one fits all thing here. We have to use that intuition. That's why I brought that up to begin with.
So I just wanted to say something, and you brought out a lot of good points there. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay.
I'm just going through I'm going through these slides just
Okay.
to see if there's anything else I want to say.
So talking about emotions, to remember, our brain is like a memory bank. And memories, are formulated from the time of conception to now. And we're constantly having memories and the memory stay there. And over time, we just develop memory over memory over memory. So if you look at a child between 0 and 7, that's the time we're so suggestible, right? It doesn't matter whether consciously or subconsciously we're taking in stuff. And at that point, memories are being already instilled in us, right? And sometimes emotions and these memories have if it's very emotionally charged, it can eventually affect our behavior. And as a child, if you see something, an abusive household or whatever, you have to fend for yourself. You kind of realize at that point, oh my gosh, I got to do this. This is the way life is. This is the way I have to live. And you kind of live life based on that memory. And sometimes we don't even know, we're not conscious of it. It's so subconscious, it's so subtle. That's why you need to go deep. We need to go deeper and to find out. And being aware is good. Being aware, we're conscious of it, but we have to be so careful not to allow the analytical mind to get in the way, that we're so analyzing it to death. We have to really get deeper and to settle the analytical mind and to get into the lower mind, the subconscious mind, to see what those triggers are, to kind of neutralize that at a different level. Because the analytical mind is the mind that divides the subconscious with the conscious mind, right? And if we let the analytical mind get in place, then we're overanalyzing, then we get into that loop again. We're just in that loop, right? So I just wanted to put my that 2 cents worth in there.
Thank you, Shani, and that's that's totally true. What I wanted to distinguish, say a little bit about awareness. There's 2 kinds of awareness. The first level of awareness we come to is awareness of. When we first start waking up, we become aware of our thoughts, and that's where we can get into this analysis paralysis. We're aware of our thoughts, we're aware of what we're doing, and we try to figure out, we get very intellectual about it. There is a deeper aspect of awareness, and that is the awareness that holds everything. This awareness is not separate. This awareness is not a function of our brain. It is not a function of our awareness of. It is the crucible that holds all being. And when we can move into this, this is what non-duality is about. This is kind of the new dispensation of consciousness. And people like Nisargadatta, Ramana Maharshi, Gangaji, this is kind of a new spirituality that's coming. It's really old, but I mean it's coming into being, because it's talking about moving directly into this awareness of. This awareness of is pre-problematic. It is not a place where problems. It is not a place that houses the past. It doesn't house the emotional brain reality. It's something very luminous, very transcendent. When we can't get to that, then we do the other. But I am suggesting that we probably can get to that more than we realize. And we don't want to discount the possibility that there may be an instantaneous healing through going directly into the awareness. And what I'm saying, when we can't go directly into this this peaceful, non-problematic, it's bigger than reality, then that's when we move into what you're talking about, Shanti. Then that's when we move to trying to clear out these obstacles. The Course in Miracles says, you know, we don't want to teach love, we want to remove the obstacles to love. Well, it's the same thing. We teach how to remove the obstacles. So we will need to remove the obstacles. Sometimes the obstacles will resolve in front of our face, and that can be very beautiful. And it does take mind training. This is not instant, but I'm just saying, let's not throw that out, that it can be instantaneous. Let's keep that on the table. Have I worn the topic out? All right, any other comments?
Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay. I wanted to share something that I had learned, kind of going back on your counting down from 5. And I think it's good to piggyback on what you had just mentioned. I used to be a teacher, and one of our professional developments, they were talking about, you know, the brain reacting, as somebody was, you know, saying about bringing triggers from the back of the brain to the front. And they were actually teaching us a method where, as the teacher and presenting a question to the class, that as the teacher, we were supposed to count to 5, because, you know, in the classroom, you had those students that would know the answer immediately. And the theory behind it as a teacher was that those other children, you know, that may take several seconds to think about it and come up with the answer, were all often, you know, kind of left behind per se. So they were asking us to give that 5-second rule, to allow other kids, even for their brains to process, to come up with an answer, and allow all children to hopefully answer the question. Interestingly, I have found this process very helpful in my adult life, especially even dealing with even sometimes my husband, parents, bosses, and things like that. Because oftentimes we go into that primal amygdala thinking where you respond immediately before they even have a question out. And instead, to slow that brain process down, count to 5, process what that person has asked you, and then you have time to also process on how you'd like to respond. And that sometimes lowers that emotional response. And even going from what you were saying with the Course in Miracles, I think that that pause leads time for maybe love to intervene, or more patience to intervene, or more understanding to intervene, instead of being reactional.
That's a great point. That's beautiful. I will say that whether this is important or not, what I heard was that we want to count from 5 to 1 if we're talking about the intervention, because if we count from 1 to 5, the brain can go 6, 7, 8. And this is just when we're innovating, and we want to go to the brain is usually saying 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and that now it's over with. And so in your case, it may be a little different because you're using this space. But I think what you're also saying, and I'm sure others have experienced it, when I wait, I will experience this intervention of something, a higher way to look at it, a better way to look at it, an understanding or compassion that intervenes. And that's very, very beautiful. I always have more to say, but I think I've said more than we need to hear. And so we're just going to open it up for general conversation, remarks, questions, or we can end right here, whatever you want to do.
Yeah, Anne, can you hear me?
Yes, John, I hear you.
So
I don't see you, but I hear you.
Oh, okay. The Buddha has 4 noble truths, and the first one is that life is suffering, pain, and also has misery. Can you comment on that respect to your talk this morning?
Yes, I think I did mention Buddha at the beginning. Buddha says that we will suffer because we will be attached, and we will be attached because we will love. And when we love others, we will lose them. and then we will be painful. Just a minute, what do you need?
Take your desktop off.
Do what? Take my desktop off?
Oh, take off your PowerPoint.
Oh, okay. Let me see if I can figure that out. Hold on just a minute. I'm going to see if I can. Okay, let me see if I can find people. Let's see. Nope, that's not it. I don't know how to take it off. I wanted to see. Oh, stop share. Here we go. Ah, there's people. Okay, so if you continue to go deeper into Buddhism, what you will find, but it's in higher levels of Buddhism, you will find that Buddha talks about ease and about entering this easy level of consciousness. It is not until the later teachings that you get there with Buddha. But we do have this progression in terms of human, and that is that we have the suffering because we enter in these relationships as humans. We don't enter into them knowing our spiritual identities, and that's why we suffer. So as I'm saying, yeah, Buddha says that we will suffer. It's not necessary. The Course in Miracles also says that suffering is unnecessary. Special relationships are unnecessary, but that Spirit will use these things as stepping stones to wholeness and holiness. So they're not necessary, but they do tend to be in the collective consciousness. Some people say that we become bodhisattvas when we're willing to process this collective unconscious angst until it's healed, and we want to reincarnate until come back into a physical form until this is gone. So there is that pain and suffering, whether it's real or not, I can't tell you. It feels real, but there's a lot of the ego-driven struggle and suffering we don't have to have.
Okay.
I don't know if that answers your question, John.
Yeah, you did.
Okay. Any other thoughts or comments? That's Elena's, Ronald's, yours waving your hand. Let's see if I can turn it off your thing. Triet, can you turn Ron's phone off? I think Ron was waving his hand. I can't hear you. Triet?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, there you go.
Oh, great. I thought I had audio issues. No, I just wanted to thank you for the presentation in case I didn't get anything in today. But no, very interesting what you're talking about. I've been through some things where, like you mentioned in your presentation about being robbed at gunpoint. And so I found out that there was a lot of things going on in my mind. I would just be thinking everyone's out to get me, and I had all these problems. But to make a long story short, over a period of time, I felt like I was fabricating these thoughts that were not even true, just picking up something and in the sphere and everything. And then slowly I realized that sometimes you just have to step back and let life run its course. You're not always in danger every second. You're not always, and so I just wanted to comment on the part about sometimes you can have thoughts coming in and you have to suppress them. You have to move in another direction, think positive, and realize what's coming in is just aftermath or things. But thank you for your presentation. And Shanti, thank you for last time, that presentation also. That's all I want to say.
Thank you, Ron. Anyone else have something to say?
Yeah,
I guess.
Ron, I just want to make a comment that we have to be so careful that you don't want to suppress the thoughts, because that's going to pop up again. So the thing is to be aware, like what Anne said, is to be aware and conscious of it, and then feel the emotions that come up, and then what are the beliefs around it? The beliefs around it. Why am I believing this way? Why is it still true for me? Kind of go into that, not going by analysis, by paralysis, but then kind of saying this is not even real anymore, right? So we have to be careful about the language we use for ourselves, how we speak to ourselves, and I just wanted to bring that awareness to you. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate that. Yeah, I think you hit the right, you used the right word, awareness. I just became aware of stuff that's just thoughts coming by that maybe I want to accept or release. And so, yeah, a sense of awareness of what's going on, what's really going on. And maybe, you know, like you can think you know reality, but it may not be the reality you know that's there in front of you. So, but thank you for using that word.
I want to speak about having a tragedy like that. It is normal to be upset after a tragedy like that. For example, being robbed at gunpoint, I had to grieve the loss. I had to grieve the loss to believe that I was safe. Always safe. I had to grieve, you know, I had to grieve the loss that I believed that bad things wouldn't happen to me. I had to grieve a lot of things. And so I had to face that grief and move on. But even throughout that, it was, you know, the whole process was immersed in spiritual understanding, and I went into therapy to help deal with it. There was after the sadness and the grief, there was anger at the men. It changed my life. It created a financial hardship for me. I had to deal with all that kind of stuff. Now, so it's very important to know what's genuine suffering that needs to be handled and what is ego-driven. And sometimes it sounds like, you know, sometimes the period of time we work that out subconsciously and we actually let it go. At other times we don't work it out and we're just suppressing it. So it's important to be aware of what we're doing. There's just no one size fits all on anything, or one answer solves every problem is what I mean. Anyone else have anything that they would like to say, comment?
Ann?
Yeah, Charles?
Charles, just want to express to the group how much I've enjoyed listening in today, and also express to them how much I appreciate your teachings of EZosophy. It has definitely made a difference in my life, and it's something I practice consciously when I think of it consciously. And that's the point. We have to stop being unconscious if we want to be conscious and take control. Like the idea expressed about being aware. When we become aware of it, then we can decide, do I want to change my thinking about that or just continue on? So I appreciate your work and know that it has made a difference.
I do have to say, thank you so much, Charles. I have to say that Charles has probably read more of my EZosophy teachings than anybody on the planet. He is my editor. He helps me put out, if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be putting out this weekly newsletter that I put out, where I put an article in it and some videos. And so he tirelessly does this. He does this as a volunteer. I appreciate all the volunteers that helped me get my work out there, the ones of the past. So many people have given so many hours to get this message out. I do think that it's a message that needs to be heard. It's a message of ease. I started getting this message out in the 80s, and I have found that it is now in the spiritual dialogue, speaking about ease, that it's gained a place of respectability and honor. And I'm very happy for that. And it's people like Charles that have helped me get this message out. Thank you so much, Charles. More comments? I mean, you don't have to say anything. I'm just, you may want to. I mean, we're all stuck at home talking to each other. We may want to talk to somebody else.
Oops.
Joe, you're going to have, Triet's going to have to unmute you, Joe. Just a minute, Joe. Triet's going to have to Triet, can you?
Muted.
Okay.
I have to say, Anne, I learned so much from you today. I just want to thank Charles for putting all of your stuff up, because Clem and I get you every week.
You do.
Look so forward to your newsletter. It is just such a joy to me, and I always smile at your experiences. And I wanted to say that your sharing of your experiences as an example of trying to sell your house, then you took it off the market, then you put it back, and through that journey with you, now, especially with the COVID-19, has just has unbelievable recognitions. It's like I can relate to that. Maybe you're trying to you've sold your house, now you're going to have to move, and so it may be your house that you're dealing with, but for me, my house is translated to something, another journey. And I'm sure for everyone else, you know, we have our own house, selling our house and trying to pack up and move. But this experience, you know, I've never heard a class on your EZosophy, even though I've been exposed to it. This has been incredible, and I've learned so much about emotions. And I just wanted to say one of the things that really, because I grew up in a household that was a wonderful household, but I never saw my parents fight. I didn't know how to fight. So anyway, and so one of the things that I've had to learn how to stand up for myself, you know? So one of the things that you said that really made a difference to me was we take on our parents' emotions. So it was like, that's where I got this feeling. This is where I got that. You know, it was from my parents. Maybe they didn't fight in front of the children, but we picked up those emotions. That really hit home with me. I've talked too much. So thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. All right.
Oh, no, Joe, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Joe is a retired therapist, and so she knows a tremendous amount and has helped a tremendous amount of people. I'm always glad I can sit with you and we can help each other out. Okay, thank you. Terry, did you have your hand up? Triet, can you take?
Yes, I just wanted to say that you know, looking for the silver lining in the sometimes horrible clouds. I think that I would like to say that one of my searches for something to appreciate in this whole situation is that it has brought the Theosophical Society in Houston, including West Houston, because we're looking at doing the same thing, to technology that is allowing inclusivity that was not available before. And as everyone may know or may not know, I live in Willis in Montgomery County. And so your access to the meetings are not available to me. And I am thrilled at, you know, even though disappointed at the horrible reason for this happening, but to see that the society is moving towards a video conference like this. And I do really, really hope that you continue this even when you get back to the lodge. And so that's all I wanted to say. And thank you. It was a great, and I missed all of the meetings, all of the ones over the last couple of years. So thank you so much for doing this. And also, I'm really hoping that this kind of use of technology will continue, at least for some important topics.
Thank you. And anyone else? Triet?
Yeah, so to me, suffering and pain and fear and all those are lessons to be learned. And to me, everything is involved with karma. Karma is something that is created. It's a lesson that you have to study, learn from the lesson, and each one of us had to learn those lessons. So until we actually learn that lesson and improve upon that, it would come back and back, you know, continue on. So the best thing is, how do you figure out what lesson it is that you're supposed to learn? And once you learn it, you can interpret the lesson in a certain way that will help you improve your life and the action that you take in the future. So all of the suffering and pain and stuff like that, those are what I consider the dark stuff. As if a thunderstorm, sooner or later the thunderstorm will clear out and the sun will shine again. So it is up to you and each one of us to learn the lesson for this particular moment, how we supposed to interact with each other, how we supposed to keep safe distance and so on. And so to me, it's important to learn that everything that happened to you is driven by karma, and learn how to interpret the lesson that is given to you and overcome it. Use it as a stepping stone rather than something that you have to bear with, right?
Thank you, Triad. I think that the concept of karma is very valuable to many people. That's what's so wonderful about the choices that we have. I think that belief systems are good if they serve us, if they bring us to a release, if they bring us to moksha or freedom. If they don't, then they're not valuable. So we need to use the one that works for us. Sometimes maybe the mechanic is not going to be using that particular model of redemption. He may be going through the Christian model, but it doesn't mean that he or she does not get the message. So there, that is a wonderful way to look at life, that we are learning lessons. The shadow side of that is that when we try, a lot of times people will have hardships and they cannot figure out a lesson, and it's like hitting a blank wall. And we can't always figure that out, you know, what's going on. And so we still have to deal with it, even if we can't figure out what it is. And we can't be looking for a lesson and suffering for years over something. What I found is often when I have an upset and I look at it deeply, I can often have an instant recognition of how it happened, how I created it, where it came from. I mean, it's just, you know, 10 million pieces of information will come into my mind as a flash or an aha that has, it's a non-verbal realization. And that's very wonderful. But when it doesn't come, then I'm left with something that I still have to deal with. So as I'm saying, that is one perspective that is not necessarily available to everyone. And it's a great perspective. Yes, Anthony.
Going on what you were just saying.
Oh no, I'm sorry, that's Jennifer.
Oh, that's okay. Going on what you were just saying there, I think that is something we can all relate to, is emotionally dealing and struggling is just that. It's a struggle, and even though while you're working your way through it, it can be dreadful and horrible. That's, I guess, the challenge, and you're providing tools here for that. And it's not obviously a cure-all, as you were saying. It's not a fix for everyone, but it's something to help, because we're all human, and we all do know those emotions are painful, and we wish we could make them go away a lot quicker than what they truly do often.
Yes, I'm moving. I bet everybody else's bottoms are getting tired too. And Van, Tria, can you take Van off?
Well, hi everyone. I'm very happy to have the meeting today. Like Terry said, this is a very good tool to everybody get together to learn. Yes, I take your message, Terry. From now on, I think that even we get back to normal, we need to get online like this so that people from everywhere can join the meeting. Like Jeff said, you know, this is a karma, and we all know we are here to learn, and these are the lessons that we can go through. Always think positive, and whatever happens is a lesson for us to learn. So I know that in international, Tim Boyd been sent out the email that to ask us to do the meditation 3 times a day to do the healing for the world. So if anybody has time, please do it. We have one at 8 o'clock, one at 12, one at 8 a.m., one at 12, and one at 8 p.m. So join the team. That's what I and Lynn do that every day when we get time. So do that.
Has that been sent out, man? Did y'all send that out?
Yeah, we did.
You did? Okay. I guess I missed it.
So also the Theosophical Order Service been helping all the we call the hotspot, Chicago. Where is it? There are 4 different spots that they right hot right now with all the patients, and then Seattle, Louisiana, and I think Los Angeles. So we try to get some donation, and we try to help the frontline nurses and doctors, help them to have some meal and whatever they need for the mask wear or whatever. And that's been go on for a while, and then it go through real good. And like I say, this is a very good meeting. Thanks, Anne, and thanks everybody. Anthony, Jennifer, nice to see you again. We missed you.
I just want to say that if you want to send it to the Theosophical Order of Service, you can find their address. They had said if you send a check, it would be better because they don't have to waive the 3% fee if you would like to donate to providing vegetarian meals and other things to the hospital staff in the areas that Van listed. I want to thank you all for coming. I hope that in some way this will help you question if you do have a HARD, a heart attack, so that you can move back into the ease and flow of life itself. Thank you very much.
And I want to clarify, I asked Aranda yesterday about the link to donate at the TOS, and actually she said that they don't have to pay the 3% fee.
Oh, good. Okay.
For the credit card. So anyone could donate using the credit card as well. The 3% only is applicable to PayPal. So if someone donates to PayPal, then that's where the 3% come in. So that's what she said.
Okay. Of course, I'm a PayPal donor, so that's why.
And also, I don't know if everyone aware the bill that they just signed in Congress. You are now able to donate for this year. They will give you, even you claim standard deduction, up to $300 above the line. So that used to be, you know, the deduction for donation like that, it's only itemizer. But this for this year, you can claim that up to $300, even you claim the standard deduction. So that's good too.
Oh yeah, good news on that. Okay, well, I guess we're pretty much through.
Okay.
Well, thank you for everyone. And,
thank you.
I will send out the link for
let me see. For some of you, like Marcia and Terry and Anthony and Jennifer, I don't know, we are planning on moving. We have loved being in the Theosophical Society here. I will not be able to see any of you physically probably before we leave. We're still hoping we're able to leave, because we don't know whether we'll be able to make it or not. It is an adventure. But if I don't get to see you kind of like this so much, it's been great meeting all of you and talking to all of you over the years. Thank you so much.
Well, please join us when you can, Anne, because we just love your wisdom and your being, your energy. It's just been phenomenal.
Thank you so much, Marcia. I appreciate your videos that you send me on Messenger and all the things that you send me. You send me a lot of things. I appreciate that. Yeah, we don't know. We probably be able to be on online meetings, but you know, I'm just very sad that I was not able to say goodbye to all of you physically, and who knows what's going to happen. We may have this thing lifted and we show up in July because we couldn't move. We don't know what's happening.
It's a mystery school.
It is definitely a mystery school.
Where are you trying to move to?
We're trying to move to outside of Charleston, South Carolina, in Somerville.
Okay. On